So over the weekend we hosted our first in-person event. We did a Sanctum Squad Winter Regional, nearly 50 players. So we're just going to go over the breakdown, what was cool, what decks were like, you know, inspiring, all the cool stuff that happened. So yeah, we're just going to go through the deck breakdown. Which
I just want to give a big thank you as well to everyone that attended, as well as Glasshammer for hosting us. And halfway through the event as well, the owner of the store actually came down and he gave us like 45 lost starts for nothing, just to give out to the players, which was
really nice touch. Yeah, really nice.
So
big thank you to them.
So we'll go over the breakdown of like the representation of like everyone that actually played. So weirdly enough, the most popular deck that was actually played at this event was Invoked, Shadow or Dogma variants. Every single one of the decks that took 16% of the whole player base, they were playing at least two of these engines. Some of them were a little bit weird, like there was a Cyberdark deck that actually did quite well, that was playing Cyberdark, Dogma and Shadow. But yeah, that took up 16%. Funnily enough, this is the most represented deck by the whole players, and not a single one actually got into top cut, which was quite interesting.
It's quite telling, I think.
Yeah, so like 7 different players were attempting to just lock people out of the game with Winder, and 7 people failed to do that consistently enough to make it into the top cut.
Which is such a shame.
The next most represented deck, which was Tri Brigade, which I don't know.
No surprise.
I think we were saying before the event started that felt like probably the best.
Yeah.
Or the most consistent.
So Tri Brigade took up 14% of the total representation, and then only one actually managed to get it into the top cut. He did actually win the event. He went,
Big Kieran.
Yeah, he went EXO, so shout out to Kieran for winning. He also got a Starlight out of one of his
entry packs, so it was like, just some days it's your day, but big up Kieran, he's one of our local players. Yeah, well done guy.
And then the next most popular deck after that was VW, which had 5 players playing it. 2 of those actually managed to get into the top 8, so it's probably got the best conversion rate out of all the decks. And then we've got Dragon Link, which was the next most popular, just taking up just 10%. Not a single one managed to get into the top cut.
A lot of bad players playing Dragon Link as well.
Were there any Dragon Link even in the top 16? I don't remember seeing any.
I'm not too sure.
I watched a Dragon player get sphere moded, and that just made my day.
And then after that there were just a few decks like Mech Orcust had a couple of players, Pure Eldritch had a couple, well, Eldritch and Dogma.
I think Eldritch was probably like, I don't know, when we were watching the top tables it was almost like table 2 or 1 like the whole day.
It seemed like, yeah, when I was watching the guy play, because one of them actually came second place, his boards just looked broken every time.
Yeah.
Like every time I walked past he was flipping punishment on someone and they were unable to play afterwards.
We were saying it's the most interesting deck list from the event.
Yeah, so like,
really interesting list.
We'll talk more about the actual like deck list itself. Like,
yeah, because we took deck lists, so we've literally got all of the top 8 builds.
All the data.
We've got one spicy list that we were watching like throughout the day that was like, it was just really cool.
It was really funny more than anything.
Yeah. And then like after Dragon Link, like there was a couple of Eldritch, there was a couple of Mech Orcust, which was very cool. There was a couple of Altergeist, and then there was a couple of Drotron as well, and then every other deck, and 2 Cyber Dragons as well, and then after that every other deck was just a one-off, like there was just one person in the room playing those decks, so that should be categorised as other. Something that's quite interesting is that when you take this sort of player pool and then turn it into the top 8, there were actually 7 different decks, 2 of which had 2 people. So like Virtual, for instance, had 2 spots in the top 8, and then there were 6 other different decks in the top 8.
Which is really nice to see.
Yeah, so I just want to go over what was in the top 8. So just there.
Yes.
Go on then.
Yeah, so 2 Virtual World, 1 Droidtron, shout out Jack, I watched him, I'm so glad that he's top because that's the deck I'm like invested in. 1 Tri-Brig that obviously won the event, 1 Dogma Lich, 1 Prank Kids, 1 Altergeist and 1 Mech Orcust. That was the top 8.
Is there anything here that anyone finds really surprising?
Not really. I think
this does feel like the meta.
This is just a really
I think the Mech Orcust is probably the only one that I think is strange. So he actually placed 8th, and it was Connor Kelly. His list is actually like, pretty interesting as well. It's not like any Orcust or Mech Knight deck I've ever seen.
He was playing a staple,
yeah, it was actually playing, I think there was like 14 or 15 main deck trap cards. And then in his Mech Knight package was just 3 purple, 1 blue, and then the Gearsus, and then his Orcust package was just Gearsu, 1 Nightmare, 1 Symbol, 1 World One. So his deck was like quite compact, it was just very clean. But yeah, Connor actually played against the Altergeist guy that actually came top 8 as well. And those 2 were in a feature match, and Connor actually won that feature match, which I was quite surprised to see, because
I think mechas are good because it's fine against guys.
Because my experience with Autogeist is that if you get into a grind game with them, they're gonna snowball.
The game one was about half an hour.
Yeah, it was a long game. Like Autogeist would generally just snowball you every time, but Connor it looked like every time I walked past, like his board was just as big as Matt's. So we're just gonna go over something that I want to talk about as well is that we actually managed to work out what the most played cards were throughout the whole event. So of all the players that actually entered, the most popular cards.
Joint first.
Yeah, it was joint first. Was obviously Ash Blossom, which I'm sure no one is surprised to see, and then it was Imperm as well.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if this is just because everyone played Imperm or it's just because new players were able to pick it up because of the structure deck. But
it's been the best hand trap for a while now.
I'm not surprised to see either of these two as the most popular cards.
And it only gets better in Bode meta.
And then after that, it was Effect Veiler, which had 19 players playing it in the main deck.
Which I think makes sense when there's like a high number of Tri-Brigade, because that's like the hand trap there.
Imperm and Veiler, and then something that was like really... there were a few cards that I really wanted to see how many people were actually playing in this tournament. Something extremely surprising was Crossout Designator.
I'm not sure it's that surprising.
Only 4 people entered with Crossout Designator in their deck list at all.
But one did top.
And only one of them actually made the top.
It's less than 10%.
25%. Well, no, look, 25%.
Less than 10% entered with it.
Yeah, but 25% of the people that did topped. So.
And the guy that topped was the Prank Kid player.
Yep. Which makes sense.
I think this is sort of like very confirming, like what we were saying in the last video about Crossout. Is that I feel like Crossout goes in decks that already plays the natural targets anyway.
And the decks that are very weak to like
specific
hand traps.
Yeah, so like Ash Blossom.
Yeah, basically.
I feel like when you put Crossout in your deck and then you start putting in the one-off hand traps, what you're doing there is you're putting the cart before the horse.
100%.
Rather than having the horse.
I genuinely
pulling the cart.
said this, didn't I? I said that like it's going to really skew deck building, and I feel like if you put like even though it's a power card, it's like unless your deck only loses to that one hand trap, like I don't think you need to play it, and that's obviously what everybody else is like.
I do think it gets significantly better in Bode. I really do, especially with with Bode you'll see it start to have the applicability of being able to use cards in your main deck, because I personally think Destroy Phoenix in 4 is going to be that popular. You're going to have people being able to set crossouts to banish their own fusion destinies, to do stuff like that. I think Crossout really will come into its own in the next format. I'd definitely be buying them now because how cheap they are at the minute.
Something else I was really interested in was to see how many people were playing Triple Tactics Talent in the main deck. The reason why I wanted to do this is so that we can sort of like come up with a sort of like stat where you can sort of how often you can you should think that your opponent is playing talents, especially when you go in second and you hit like an Ash Blossom, and you hit them with an Ash Blossom, because it gives you an idea of how many times they're going to like look at your hand and spin something away. 16 people of every entrant actually played Triple Tactics Talent. Every single person main decked it, no one side decked it. So that does give you an idea of how often you can expect to be sort of like punished by this card, especially when you open with one hand trap like an Ash or a Veiler.
No, I don't think punished is the right word there. I think it's just a good stat to know that like potentially when you're going to go second that you are going to see somebody with a talent shit. I think they're not being sided essentially.
Something that's interesting as well is that the 2 most popular cards were Ash and Imperm, one of which plays into talents, the other one does not.
Yeah.
Which I think is quite interesting. Something else that we noticed as well when we looked at everyone's side decks, there were 19 players siding or maining Droll and Lockbird, and only 2 people entered playing Droitron, which I think
it's definitely that fear factor.
People are shit scared of that deck.
Yeah, but like again, there was 2 Droitron players and 1 topped.
Yeah, so and he managed to dodge them all as well.
Yeah,
it's a good. Yeah. It's a good indictment, really.
I was interested to see how many people were main decking Mystic Mine. There were 5 players main decking Mystic Mine. I'm pretty sure everyone that played it mained it, they didn't side it.
But talking about Mystic Mine, I think the spiciest deck we saw was the one that was maining that.
Yeah, so the spiciest deck and like
the wow factor deck when like
I really liked the player as well. So like,
he went on a real roll as well.
He went on a roll. It was a fucking rampage. I was watching him. He 2-0'd somebody. He was playing Trickstars. 2-0'd somebody. He's like, I ain't here to make friends. As he was packing his fucking stuff up.
Round 1, I think it was about 8 minutes in. He walked up to me, gave me the match slip, and he went 8 minutes 2-0. But he was a really funny guy. We all like him.
Yeah, it was nice to meet him, man.
So we'll have the Trickstar list up here as well, which was very cool. Something that I do want to note is that he played 1 Pot of Extravagance. I'm really interested to know that if he would have played 3.
Yeah, I think he's a new player. Yeah, I think that's what it is. But
he's a returning player, I think.
Okay.
But yeah, so and the other thing that I wanted to count as well was the amount of players that played Dragoon in their deck. So there were only 7 people that played Dragoon in their decks. I really want to see the difference with Destroy.
You took the words out of my mouth, because they're going to be a similar price. If not, DP is coming in slightly cheaper.
It serves a similar function, so I want to see how much better the DP engine is.
We'll definitely, because we're going to be hosting one after the release of
hopefully in the next few weeks,
Burst of Destiny, so we'll have some data for that.
And then I think that's it for the sort of like the main deck stuff, and then we can talk about the common cards in the top in deck list.
So the most common cards in the top 8, no surprises, it's Ashen Imperm, same for the thing, but a theme we noticed throughout the top 8 was that Solemn Strike was exceptionally popular in the main deck.
4 people of the top 8 main decked 3 copies of Solemn Strike.
In the main, yeah, oh, you said that. So it's interesting, and we all talk about how powerful that card is quite often, don't we?
Yeah, like I think it's really sort of telling of like the sort of pace of the format when a trap card like that is the most popular card in the successful
Talking
decks.
about the pace of the format as well, obviously us 3 judged it, and so we know like the average length of games, and aside from maybe one person at the start of the round,
there were like,
overwhelmingly the round went on quite long.
Yeah, look, I would say like the majority went past 30 minutes, which is like
which is good. Like, it's the point of a competitive card game, isn't it? But as for sort of individual cards, I think there'll be no surprises for saying how powerful Zeus was on the top tables.
Yeah, so I think 6 out of 8 of the top players were able to make Zeus. The only players that weren't playing it were the Prank Kid deck and the Auto Ice deck, which obviously just can't like really make it naturally.
Which I think like against like Zeus is probably one of the best cards against those decks as well. Yeah, so it's kind of telling.
So yeah, and then the most common side deck cards within the top 8 were Lancia, Droll, and Solemn Judgment. I think Solemn Judgment actually had
5. Yeah,
it had 5 players main side decking multiple copies of it, which I think is again that's sort of just telling the same as Strike, just the pace and. What's like really good about the like Judgment and the Strike is that like as you can see like Ashen Imperm are like the most common played cards. So if you're like if your actual engine play dies to those cards and then you just set a Strike or a Judgment, that can be enough to see the next turn win the game.
What I think is interesting as well, sorry Liam, is that Lancia saw 23 slots in the side. So if you compare that with the 6 Tri-Brigade players and the fact that only one got in the top 8 who actually won it, you then contrast with the fact that it was 19 players sided Droll for 2 Drytron players and another one of the Drytron players got in the top 8. It actually does kind of tell you the power of Drytron in that sense, whereas the more Lanciers shut down the more Tri-Brigade players, and it obviously had that effect across the tournament with only one in the top 8, but the fact that the same amount or a similar amount of Drolls couldn't shut down the Drytron players, either due to lack of Drytron players or...
so the Lanciers shut down 80% of the players, whereas the Droll...
Yeah,
50%.
But it's interesting to say and to see how scared people are, and it's an interesting thought to have.
If you look at the Dark Ruler and Droplet stats as well, they're like insane. Like I think it was about 25 people played one or the other in their main or side there.
I think to be fair, the Droplets is like, I don't know, it's universal.
It's definitely.
I think this, I know this tournament's only on a small scale and obviously like your metas may vary in that, but I think it really puts a nail in the coffin for actually playing Droll, because you're playing it for Drytron primarily.
And there's nobody playing it.
And there's no one playing. So you really need to consider...
And half of them are winning anyway.
And the worst one is Cycle Reader. Like, do we have the stats on the Cycle Reader?
One player in the top 8 sided 3.
Sided 3. Which is like, it's just seeing no play really.
Yeah, so don't play any cards that are...
No, you know what I mean? Like, people are afraid to play Drytron. I think people are afraid of Drytron.
Yeah, I think it is a scary deck though, ceiling wise. It's the best I think in it. But it's just so fragile anyway that I don't even think you need your draws. I just think it has to be like, you have to just have a really good day with that deck, I think.
Yeah.
Like, it's just one of those, isn't it? Whereas like Tri, I think you would...
So something that's interesting is that Drytron, the final match on table 1 was Drytron versus Tri-Brigade.
Yeah.
And apparently we were talking to the players afterwards, and I think Kieran said that Jack had the cards to win game 3.
Yeah, like I watched the whole game obviously because it was almost like the final. There was, I wouldn't say it was a misplay. I think it was just like, I don't know, man. It's weird with that deck.
He was playing around some.
He basically, the guy, the Tri-Big player plays. He ordered him basically, and then he had like 3 or 4 spells in hand, or 2 spells in hand, or whatever it was, and he just basically didn't activate the right Drytron at the time to get the Meteorus, which would have been the discard for Phoenix.
Didn't he need to mill Zeta off Gamma?
No, he had Zeta Gamma in hand, and then he activated Gamma first. That was the
Okay,
problem.
okay, yeah.
Whereas he needed to activate the Zeta first. But I thought that he was playing around a hand trap in hand, that's why you activate Gamma first.
Yeah.
But the guy had no cards in hand.
Okay.
So like it was just a misplay, I suppose. But
Yeah, that's pretty much all the data we've got from our. So it's been really interesting to comb through after the fact
Yeah,
and see what's.
We'll go over the actual deck list of the top 8. So
Yes.
we'll start with the.
I think what we should do with this, to be honest, is like I'll just leave this blank for 3 or 4 minutes and I'll just put them up a few minutes after each other and you can just look. So I'll put them in place order, 8th upwards, and you can just read them. So rather than listen or spurt on, you can just watch the end of this video for 2 minutes and then see.
Try and stay
What's
and
up?
see the second placed Eldritch
he's
slight dogmatic list. It's really interesting.
Something with the first place Tri Brigade list as well. I actually chatted to Kieran after the tournament, and because he wasn't playing Gamma in his deck, which is really common for Tri Brigade
Or Crosshair.
or Crosshair, and he actually gave his reasoning to not be playing Gamma. As because people play around that card anyway, and we actually saw this in their match where Kieran started his turn and his opponent had Lancia, and because people play around Gamma, his opponent didn't drop it in the standby phase. Kieran then entered main phase and started his turn with Pot of Desires, which he would have
the Lancia would have stopped.
yeah. So because his opponents were playing around Gamma anyway, he didn't need to play it to have an impact like a
I really like, basically.
He played it without playing it.
yeah.
He played himself, but without knowing it, I guess. But
Congratulations.
It's nice to get the data on these things, like going, because obviously we're like competitive players, like we play all the time. You'll never come back and see like what info was available and like what the actual sort of stats showed. So for the next tournament, we're going to do exactly the same thing, but hopefully on a bigger scale. But yeah, I think that just covers the video.
So there we go. So here come the top 8 deck list starting
just
from 8.
stay from after we speak and I'll leave everything on. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. We're so close to that 1,000 again.
Oh, so close. We actually
made
hit
it, and then I don't know what's going on.
YouTube
we'll
killed
just say
some
we're not
bots.
there.
Also with the second place deck, the Eldritch deck, from the deck list, I could only see 14 extra deck monsters. I don't know what the 15th card is.
Yeah, so Sean, if you're watching, drop it in the comments, let us know what we're missing. But yeah, thank you for watching and we'll see you for the next one.